I would like to introduce to you our presenter today. That is Jay McCormick. Jay is the owner of Paradigm, I don't know if I said that right.
Paradigm. That's okay.
Consulting Services, and he has a team of 4 Access and web developers to help serve his clients. So Jay, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thanks so much. Yeah, as you were mentioning about the lacdb file, um, there is a little bit of a different purpose for that now because of the doing away with user account control, as we all know, way back, I think it was, when was that? Access 2003 or whatever it was that they terminated doing that. I forgot the exact, it's been so long ago. But as you can see on the screen here, and I'll be able to read any messages you're typing in the conversation, so I'd be happy to respond to anything I see coming up on the chat. Sometimes when I open this, as you can see, oh, that's right. That's 2007. Thanks, George, for that. Sometimes this lacdb file I can't open. I was trying to open this. It comes up in, well, okay, good, here it is. As you can see, there is, let me go to a certain column length here. There we go. So it shows always this user admin here, which is all it's going to show. As you may or may not realize, with the admin, as George was mentioning, terminated the name that would go there that you logged in with. Now they all just say admin. And this first little part, this first 32 characters here, or I guess it's 32 characters here, is actually the name of the computer. Under the computer name, right mouse click, I think you can just go to the browser here, just this PC, right mouse click, properties, computer name right there, Jay's desktop. So that'll just pull it from there and display that in the first 32 characters for whoever's logged in, given the file. Now, what I've learned is a little lesser known element here, because if you close this, and I'm actually not connected to any data, I think in the background I am connected to data of some kind. I can open up this database and actually not connect to anything, and the lacdb file will not actually be created. You have to actually have some sort of connection to the data. Let's see here. Sometimes no, it is doing that. Sometimes what I've experienced is if I open it up with a shift click, that the lacdb file isn't created. There was another users group I gave a similar presentation at a few months ago, and it wasn't creating the lacdb file if you didn't open up a table. Not only until you opened a table up did it create it, but I can see that here, even if I go in with a shift click, it's still creating the table anyway. Well, that's fine. I'm not quite sure about that issue, but so that is the basic layout of the lacdb file. And as I was describing, it can be parsed since it's regularly spaced in the ways of the every 64 characters, but or let's see, what is it, 64 or 62? Let's see here. Let's open this up with I just want to open it up. Here we go. It's actually, yeah, 64. Every 64 characters, half of that is 32. So it can be parsed based on that loop. So what I've done here, and the big question is how do you use computer names to give you a meaningful list of users that are logged into the system, because you've done away with the name of the user. at the time of Access to 2007. So what you do, this is a really great approach, is I have a startup routine that I typically run with the databases I create. It has a bit of an excessive code in it. Probably will critique me for having crap in here that I don't need. But in the startup here, I record a variety of things associated with the computer. Let me focus on one of them, and that is logging the computer information into the system. And let me get to the point where that is actually recorded. Here it is, record computer. I created a function upon login called record computer. Now this record computer adds a item into this client computer's table using this Win management object, which is a Windows object under the Win32 computer system. Okay, and it pulls a variety of pieces of information, and I'm using various other sort of Windows APIs to fill a table with computer names, not just with the computer names, but with various other pieces of information about the computer as well. So you've got kind of a log of all the different computers, whether it's a desktop or a laptop, the make, the model. It records the system type. These are all, some of these are older. This was my older computer before I got it replaced, what Windows version they're running, the hard drive space, the processor, the system memory, the current screen resolution that they're running, and I use that at one point to check if they have an acceptable screen resolution. But the most important column here is the computer name. So this has been recorded now by the virtue of the fact that you just started up. So now you're in, and you get to the main menu, and already the particular computer you're on has been recorded. So if I go to admin, the very first screen I have here is list of current users, and you can actually boot people out too. I don't have this fully working yet, but I've got a cool little boot out system that will kick a person out of the whole database. And as you can see, it took a combination between my now complete list of computer names and a parsing of the lacdb file into a temp table, comparing the two together and seeing, hey, who's logged in. Now there's an added element here too. I have a user log table that gets filled in when you log in to give you this sort of, you've been in for 3 minutes, 4 minutes sort of time here. And that is, I think it's, app version here, app usage log. So this is, it creates like a login and log out pair of records and gets a time differential between the two. So it uses that as well. And this current user is a table, a temp table that gets populated upon startup. So that's a quick overview of the process. So let's look at the next, let's go back to the beginning, if I haven't confused everybody already. And we will look at how that temp table of computer names gets populated. And we actually are doing that when we open up this admin backend screen. On the on open of that form itself, actually I put it on the on current. That, can everybody still hear me okay? It's a function that okay, good, thank you. it says here's the 1 to 31. Here's the position. It's opening the text file, basically the lacdb file, into a. Somebody needs to mute. I can hear the background there. It gets the current path of whatever database you're using and sets this file using the file system object to open up that lacdb. Oh, I got muted somehow. Can anybody hear me? Somehow it muted me. It auto muted me. I guess it's somebody muted me. I think when I said, I think when I said I could hear something in the background and somebody muted, I think I got muted. So yeah, I think Sally, I can hear you every time you make a noise. You might want to just mute your own mic. Again, it's the user table here of current, well, not user table, but the current computer table here gets populated with an add new through the loop of that file. So then this is the first element of that, coming up with this table that has a listing of computer names. Current user. I shouldn't call it user. It should be current list of computers. And then if we look at the queries and trace back here how we're doing that, it's a little convoluted here. It's bringing in not just a simpler version of this could just involve comparing a list of computer names to a list of like a user table that maybe has hard set in it, a link, which actually I do. In the users table, I do have a client computer ID that's there. That's ultimately how I'm joining it, because I'm assigning the last used computer into the user account. Every time you basically log in, it logs, hey, this is the computer that this user is now on based on the fact that you typed in your username. It goes into this user's table and plops in that number there. And that's how it works with. So let's look at this query here, this get current login to, and look at that, backtrack that for a minute here. And digging back further here, it's looking at, here's the usage log. This is the little set of records that's the login and log out that gets created with an empty time for the logout every time a person logs in. And going back further, we have this current login 1 right here, which is the starting point. This is, hey, let's look at the login records according to the official log of people logging in, which is recorded. Now, if you didn't, this is a more advanced version of that, because if you didn't want to actually log and record when people logged into the system, I guess you could theoretically eliminate this, but this is what I did for mine. It's a little more sophisticated. So this is getting login records right here. And it's limiting it to only the login pair, because there's a pair of records, both the login and log out. So we only want to look at the login records here. And then it's also joining up the computer name according to what got stamped in there when you logged in. First of all, it adds the computer to the computers table, which creates a unique ID, which then gets stamped back into the login that person just came in with. So it's all right here in one record. You've got a computer ID with a login right here. And so now all we need, as we go from this current login 2 up to the next level here, is to join it back with this client current user table. Now this would also be easy to do instead of using the lacdb file, there is a stored procedure in SQL Server called spwho, which will do a similar thing, which will list the computer names amongst a few other fields of who's currently logged into the database and what processes they're running. You'll have to do a group by on that, because sometimes people can be listed multiple times depending on processes, but it produces the same effect. So you could use this same setup, and then this then produces a list of people, users, based on computer names read from the lacdb file that are currently in the database. And of course, the duration just based on current time versus when they logged in as to when they were there, initially logging in. So if that was it all clear, that's, I guess, the basics of how I did it. And I went further with this. I haven't coded all this up yet, but I have several of my clients that do want this, that where they have 15, 20 people logged into the database at one time, you can select one of the users, and you can then click boot, and it would light up boot single user. All these fields would become enabled, and it'll fill in the user. You can say, hey, do you want to boot him now? Or you can choose, a date and a time. You want to boot him out in the future? Do you want to warn them when this occurs? Or log out after a certain number of minutes. And then, you can preset, like, you want to boot out for 15 minutes. It'll autofill that in, or you can fill in a custom until date. And so it's kind of a whole maintaining, or you could just boot everybody out. And there's also some of the functionality isn't fully set, because you got to be able to clear the boots as well. So that is sort of an add-on piece. And I did make these little icons here. You won't be able to find those anywhere. My favorite source is freeiconarchive.com. It's all royalty-free icons, and I combine little elements together using Photoshop, and it's actually pretty easy, but it produces some cool results. Part of why I developed this is because I just couldn't find anything out there, that gives you this. And I had some ideas as to how we could go about it, but this is really a handy thing to offer your clients to, give them a list of the current users logged in, ability to boot people out, etc. And there's a lot of other screens here. I haven't created all of these yet, but this is just your basic management of the user accounts. But what I wanted to present today was just the ability to say, hey, these are the users in the system. This is based on their computer name. Now does this make sense to everybody? Has anyone? I'm curious to find out. Has anyone else also sort of done something similar, or ever seen something similar to this? I would be interested to hear thoughts and comments on that.
So Jay, just to let people know, by default, we have it set up so that you're muted, but you should have control to unmute yourself if you would like to answer Jay and give some opinion, or if you're uncomfortable talking, you can type a message, and then Jay can read that.
Is the file for this great app available? You want my inventions? You want to take them for yourself? Well, I'm not offering this to everyone for free. No, this is something that I sort of invented, and it's kind of I'm sharing it with you to give you the idea, and give you, certainly if you want to build this for yourself, you can. But I don't just distribute out this file. I might write a few articles on some of the concepts, but you guys are gonna have to build your own pretty much. So does anyone else have any concepts or comments on that? I'm kind of curious to find out if anybody else has, you know, I guess there's a lack of interaction here because it's an online group. I presented something similar at a users group recently, and it was a lot more interaction. Maybe just because we were all there in person, but
So I have a couple questions. This is Maria.
sure.
And I apologize for the background noise. I have a remodel going on, so it's a little bit whiny back here, and I will mute myself as soon as I'm done asking the question here. But we talked about the locking file, but we're not actually looking at the locking file. Is that correct?
No, we are looking at the locking file. We're parsing it every 32 characters.
So can you go back over how you're getting into the locking file? Because I think I might have missed that at the beginning.
Yeah, Jim is mentioning this show user roster thing would be better than parsing the LDB, but I'll go ahead and go back here.
Okay, and I guess the other question I have related to that then is the locking file. Are you using a front end and a back end here, or just one database?
It is a front end and a back end.
So
the front end, back end is here, and the front end is here.
So you're looking at the locking table to the back end?
The locking file that's created is related to the file that's the front end file.
Okay, but
you can see there's no back end locking file created because I don't have any tables open that are linked. If I open up this table here, now you'll see a locking file that appears. But
okay.
It's possible that a person could be logged in and sitting in the menu and not actually have a table open. But I still want to capture that they're logged in. And in the case that I'm working on my own local PC, that will work. But you have to look at the backend file as the parsing, as what to parse, not the front end file, because the front end file will always only show yourself as logged in.
Okay, I was going to say, because what I usually do is each user has their own front end, and it's on their local desktop, and then the back end's on the network drive or whatever.
Right. And we do want to use the back end file. For the sake of this example, I was just pointing to the locking file on the front end so that it would show up just as is just part of the example. But you can point to wherever the let me go to the part where that's occurring here. You said which file we look at. I have a settings table where it shows you here's the access path. This is where the backend's located, etc. Like right here. So we'd look up this root folder, or actually install path. I have it currently set to look at the install directory, but what it needs to look at is this sort of backend folder path, like right here. And so we're doing that when we open up the form. When this guy right here is opened up, users current, okay. Right here, when this form is being opened, all of this little quick action of interrogating the lacdb file occurs in this function called show user roster multiple users. It's getting the data path here from the local table. Actually, it is using the backend file. It is using the same path as to wherever the data is stored. So in my case, I pointed the path to the backend data into the same folder as where I'm storing the front end. And at the moment, you don't see a lacdb file there because at the moment I don't have a table open. But if you're going into the admin screen, by the fact that you're running those queries, you're going to have tables open and that lacdb file will exist. So that's why right now you don't see it. But then, excuse me, when you open up the form, boom, it shows that you're there instantly. So again, on open of the form that displays the list of current users, right then it's grabbing and creating that current users table by parsing through the file that's located wherever I specified it in the settings table that I created. So it's all very flexible. You can just pretty much set up, you know, in that table, hey, this is where the backend file is located. It comes here and swaps out the AccessDB for a lacdb file name, and then just parses it, and it works very stably every time. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And then just to further reiterate, so can you open the lacdb file as a text file and see stuff as well?
I can, let me get a table open so it actually creates the file. Actually, that's a local table. Here we go. So yes, here's the file. Here's the lacdb file. You can right mouse click and edit with Notepad+, and there's the file. You can see the names in there, and then of course the word admin. So yep, you can definitely edit that without a problem. And as you all realize, it creates a lacdb file locally when you open up the front end, wherever that's going to be on the individual user's desktop, and then this backend file, lacdb, which usually is located out on the network, is going to be filled with all the names of whoever's currently attached to it through any form of table link. But as you can see, as soon as I close this table, that lacdb file disappears, because currently, as of right now, as a front-end user, there is no table open. So therefore, there's no users going to be in it. And so the reason it shows this as a user is because when you have this form open, it is linking and using some of these attached tables, primarily this client app usage log right here. And so that's primarily what you're looking at in terms of how this thing functions, where it pulls from. Jim wrote show user roster, and I guess I wasn't aware of show user roster as a function. Is that a built-in access function that's there? I guess that would be nice to hear. Oh, you're using, okay, show user roster. This is related to ADO. Oh, it's a jet function. Okay, I got it. I just was Googling that real quick. Yeah, it doesn't work past Jet 3.5. Yeah, I just took a quick Google look at that code, and yeah, that looks like perhaps a deprecated thing. I've never had any problems with the lacdb file working. I'm pretty excited to deploy this in an environment that has about 25 users. It's a travel agency, and they're going to be wanting to use a lot of these elements of it. So the reasons that I have found that you want to view the current users is for a manager to see who's in the system at the current time, like to see who's still working, perhaps. If he's not in line of sight with people, or you've got people working on a wide area network out at different locations or something, he wants to take a look at to see who's in the system. They also want to see the activity of how many hours a day people are using the system, or if they we're trying to perform maintenance and we need everyone to get out of the database. That boot out function is actually very, very handy. So it's not constantly that they need to know who's in the database, but there's quite a number of reasons that come up that it's nice to know who's in the database, or when they got in, or if a person says, oh yeah, I've been here for 2 hours, and you look at, and then the manager looks up on their screen to the current users, and he sees that this person just said they were there for 2 hours, logged in 10 minutes ago. He can think to himself, okay, well, what's this person been doing for the last hour and a half that I've been paying them for, sitting at their desk? And they can call them up and say, hey, I noticed you just logged in 15 minutes ago. What's going on? You were here for 2 hours. Oh crap, you busted me. I was playing solitaire, or just, oh, I had a call, or, it prompts, like from a management standpoint, there's a lot of reasons why that person would want to see who's in or out of the database. Now, this is mainly as it relates to databases that someone's going to be sitting in all day for their work, for that type of thing. Jim is saying, show user roster works with ACE. LDB may not always be 100% accurate. Well, it's not going to be accurate because if a person's not accessing a table, then it will not show their name on the list. And I guess the only way that would occur if a person's sitting on the main menu and they're not linked to any table, it will not show them as logged into the database. So in that sense, yes, Jim, you're correct. It won't show them logged in. But people aren't going to sit in the database for that long, and I'm not on the main menu for that long, and I'm not using that as the logic to log the person out, quote unquote. That's only for viewing who's in the database at the present time. And so you bring up a good point, though, because if a person does pop back out to the main menu, they're going to disappear, and then they click on another form to go back into a different area of the database, then they're going to reappear. I suppose if a person looked at this list right at the moment that they were on the main menu, their name wouldn't appear on the list because technically the LDB file doesn't have them as logged. So yes, that's, I guess, a possibility, but generally speaking, that's just, they're not going to be constantly going into this users list, forever. In that sense, I guess it's a weakness of it, but it still is not, it's still, the system still has them as logged in until they click log out, or they log in again and it sort of auto-fills the other one. And Jim is also mentioning that phantom users at times now, if you're remote desktop, it would definitely show you up, because if you're remote desktop, it's as if you're on the network. It will create a entry in the LDB file, and you'd be fine. It's, I guess, maybe sometimes you can see a phantom user. Maybe if somebody bails out. Maybe inadvertently it keeps it there. I'm not sure, but I mean, overall, it's pretty reliable. Yeah, it's a suggestion was made. I could connect the main menu to a setup table, which is probably a good idea to make sure they stay logged in and connected to the data at all times. That would be a good little thing to add. Yeah, and Jim is mentioning if you control alt delete out of the app, it won't. It won't correctly take care of the log file. But yeah, Jim is mentioning it works 99% of the time. So what I did is, another cool thing is, I actually haven't implemented this yet, but it's always the issue of these sort of login tracking systems, if you do error out of the app or you Control-Alt-Delete out of the app or whatever, how do you capture when that person logs out? So what I've developed is this settings table again, and what I'm doing is on the login, okay, when I create this, when you log in, I set the timer to, like, say every minute, say like 60, what is that, 60,000 milliseconds, right? And what it does is it's going to write, I'm going to create a local setting called last logout stamp, and it's going to put a date and a time in there like this, like that, and every minute it'll just keep writing locally into this table. And if you log back into the app and it looks at your the usage log for you as a user and says, hey, here's my most recent set of login and log outs, and I noticed that the logout wasn't filled in. This was empty. So it's basically saying, okay, the person didn't log out properly. It's going to go into this local table, look up this value, which would be only a minute old, stamp it in there, and make a note here that says force quit. So basically it will track when you log in again, it will backfill the previous one if it wasn't filled in correctly, and it will make a note that you force quit it out. And that was a solution. I don't quite have that fully implemented yet, but that was a solution that I thought of as to a way to alleviate the force quit outs into track to within a minute or so actually when that happened, because you're constantly stamping in every minute to the local table that date timestamp. And that's such a minor transaction and it's all within the local computer. I'm not worried about that at all. Well, thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. So that's kind of the overview of it. I guess we have a full hour to kill here, don't we? I've sort of run out of material to present. But I guess I can talk about one other little cool thing that I developed. I have a SQL server, an Azure SQL server, and I've actually developed two different. I can talk for just a few more minutes, and then we can let go of the session, I guess. I have an Azure $4 a month, 2 gig limit, basic level, low DTU Azure SQL Server subscription that I just use for my own applications that I install out there. And it's kind of cool because I connect to what you're looking at here is SQL Server data in the cloud. This is all of this is Azure data, and I give each application a code, and it has a version, and there's features attached to each version, and there's a version log, and it compares the local version to this paradigm cloud-based sort of set of tables here that are all off of my SQL Server. And yes, I do need to go through and make sure they've got a driver installed, the SQL Server, which I've got a whole different, actually store the driver inside of an access field ready to be ran if need be, and they'll get prompted for it and install it. It's kind of takes care of itself that way. And then it checks if, hey, is there an upgrade available? And it bails the person out and auto prompts them for an upgrade, and effectively creates and runs a script that downloads from a shared OneDrive public link the new copy of the database. So basically they get a custom message that says, I have a bunch of custom messages that I set up here. Here we go. Here's the, I can test the message here. They get this message here that says a new version of this application is available for download, and you click upgrade, and it then quits you out of the application, and I probably can't get out of this now. I'm trying to close it here. Let me just bail out of the app here. And then it will download and reload the application, and then auto restart it for you and pop up a message that says, here's the new feature. So it's kind of a cool remote self-maintaining upgrading capability that requires me to only go into a screen on my side, paste in a new link, and tick up the version number, fill in the features, and that's it. It's kind of a remote maintenance feature that's kind of nice. And Giorgio's, does anyone use a substitute that responds to events such as selecting a day? Yeah, I don't know how I got so good at designing those forums. I guess it just maybe I'm artistic or something, or autistic, I'm not sure. But let's see here, log in. I always think applications should be enjoyable to use. And this is actually a menu system that's totally dynamic, that's all maintained through this menu system utility here. So my menu system, my reporting interface, my admin system, I've also got this control panel for all your lookup lists. All of this stuff is, I just tend to recycle into projects, all this sort of background stuff that makes it easy. You know, I, of course, do bill a certain number of hours for that. Probably I bill usually 10 hours for all that. Yeah, the date picker is built in. Yeah, I had one of my developers created a really great calendar interface for one of my apps, that one of our clients. So it's I like to reuse that. And to respond to Giorgio's comment regarding something that stays open, that's what I have this other created calendar control for. It sits open on the form, and you can click on a button, and I'm actually using an option group with 30 some odd buttons on it, and then you click on it and it activates a code, because only one button can be selected at any given time. And it lets me put other features in it, like turning red the days that are holidays, making bold certain days. You can do all kinds of stuff like that on each of the individual buttons. Like I usually put red for Sunday and Saturday, so it's just black the Monday through Friday days, that type of thing. So I'll go ahead and wrap it up now, unless anybody has any other comments. It was really fun doing this, and thanks to the Access Lunchtime group to bringing me in and asking me to do this, and I will sign off.
Hey Jay, hold on. Can I get in touch with your colleague? Hello.
Yes, you can reach me at this. You can reach me here.
All right, fine.
Thank you very much, Jay. It's been a very nice presentation. Learned some interesting tidbits here. Hopefully everyone picked up at least one or two things, even if it's form design ideas. So thank you very much for your time today and this educational presentation. Appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome. Bye-bye, everybody.